In the year 2457, humanity had reached the pinnacle of its technological prowess. The Quantum Rift Station, a colossal research facility orbiting a distant star, was the epicenter of mankind's most audacious scientific endeavor, unlocking the mysteries of parallel universes. The station housed the world's brightest minds, all united by a singular goal: to peer beyond the confines of their own reality and into the infinite expanse of alternate worlds. Dr. Ilara Voss, a physicist whose reputation had been built on revolutionary work in quantum mechanics, had spent the last decade at the Rift Station. Her team had discovered a phenomenon known as the Quantum Rift, a tear in the fabric of spacetime that, according to their data, linked infinite universes together in a vast, interconnected web. Yet despite the promising data, no one had ever been able to traverse the rift, let alone understand its true potential. That was about to change. Ilara stood before the rift portal, a vast, shimmering expanse of light and energy that hummed with a strange, almost sentient vibration. The portal had been a theory for years, but now, standing before it, Ilara knew it was more than just a concept. It was alive, pulsing, waiting for the right moment to unleash its secrets. She had spent countless hours calibrating the machine, refining the algorithms that would allow them to safely step into the unknown. "Ilara, are you sure this is the right moment?" asked Commander Liam Kaur, the station's military liaison, his voice filled with concern. He had always been skeptical of the rift, viewing it as a potential weapon rather than a scientific breakthrough. "We've run the simulations," Ilara replied, her gaze fixed on the portal. "This is the next step in human evolution. We can't afford to hesitate." Kaur's face remained grim, but he nodded. He trusted her, even if he didn't fully understand the implications of what they were about to do. The rift had already claimed the lives of 3 expedition teams who had tried to traverse it, their fates unknown. But now they had perfected a way to stabilize the field, a method that would ensure safe passage. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. With a sudden surge of energy, the portal flared brightly, and Ilara felt a strange tugging sensation at the core of her being. It was as though the universe itself had opened its mouth and was calling to her, pulling her into the unknown. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves, and stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the world around her dissolved into a kaleidoscope of shifting colors and fractal patterns. For a brief instant, she lost all sense of time and space. She felt weightless, drifting between worlds, each one just out of reach. It was as if she was at the center of a cosmic spiderweb, connected to an infinite number of threads, each leading to a different reality. Then with a sudden jolt she landed. The disorienting sensation faded, and she blinked, adjusting to her new surroundings. Ilara stood on a barren landscape, the sky above dark and foreboding, swirling with unnatural storm clouds. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and the ground beneath her feet was cracked and lifeless. It was not Earth, but it was familiar. "Welcome to the first parallel universe," Ilara whispered to herself. She felt both exhilarated and terrified. The rift had been nothing more than theory, a collection of equations and predictions. But now she was standing in the proof. And yet something was wrong. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if something unseen watched her every move. Ilara's instincts screamed that she was not alone, and her eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of life. Behind her, the rift shimmered faintly, but it wasn't the stable, solid portal she had passed through. It flickered like a malfunctioning hologram, as though it were unstable. She felt a chill run down her spine. The rift had taken her here, into this desolate world, but what had followed her? With a sinking feeling, Ilara realized she was about to face more than just the mysteries of the quantum rift. Whatever had caused this universe to unravel might just be hunting her. Ilara's heart raced as she surveyed the barren landscape around her. The storm clouds above churned ominously, casting an eerie glow over the cracked earth beneath her boots. Her hand instinctively reached for the communication device strapped to her wrist, but there was no signal. Nothing. She was cut off from the Rift Station, from her team, from everything she knew. The sensation of being watched intensified, prickling the back of her neck. She turned slowly, scanning the horizon, her pulse hammering in her ears. The air, thick with the scent of static and ozone, seemed to hum with an energy that felt foreign, oppressive. Suddenly she heard it, a low, guttural growl that echoed across the empty wasteland. Her instincts kicked in, and Ilara dropped to a crouch, her breath shallow, her eyes darting from one shadow to the next. The sound wasn't just a product of the wind, it was something living, something hunting. She stood slowly, her muscles tense, ready for whatever came next. The last thing she wanted was to be caught off guard, especially in a world that was so eerily different from her own. The growl came again, louder this time, closer. Elara turned sharply, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. Through the haze of the storm, she caught movement, a dark shape darting across the rocky terrain, moving with unnatural speed. Before she could react, the shape emerged from the shadows. A massive creature at least 7 feet tall, its skin mottled in black, with glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce the very air. It was humanoid in form, but its limbs were unnaturally long, its movements predatory. The creature stopped a few dozen feet away from Elara, its sharp claws digging into the ground as it crouched, as if sizing her up. A low rumble vibrated from deep within its chest, a clear warning that it wasn't interested in conversation. Elara's mind raced. She needed to think fast. There was no time to analyze the creature's biology or its origins. She only had a few precious moments to act. With a steadying breath, she reached for the blaster at her side, an experimental weapon she had brought along as a last resort. It was small, lightweight, and had been designed to disrupt energy fields, perfect for dealing with anything that might interfere with the rift's delicate mechanisms. But as she aimed the blaster at the creature, it suddenly stood upright, its mouth splitting open in a horrifying display of razor-sharp teeth. The creature let out a piercing shriek that sent a chill down Elara's spine, and with a single explosive leap, it charged. Elara fired, the energy blast illuminating the stormy landscape in a flash of blue light. The creature recoiled, its howl of pain ringing out, but it didn't stop. Instead, it seemed more enraged, its claws raking the air as it closed the distance between them in a blur of motion. Elara barely had time to dive to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's deadly swipe. The blast had only slowed it, not stopped it. She had underestimated it. Her heart pounded as she scrambled to her feet, her mind racing for a solution. There was no room for error. As the creature came at her again, Elara's eyes darted to the rift, still flickering in the distance. It was her only way back, but it seemed unstable, unpredictable. Was it truly the portal to another universe, or was it a trap, a doorway to something far darker? A plan began to form in Elara's mind. She couldn't escape yet, she needed to learn more. The rift had brought her here for a reason, and she couldn't let fear dictate her actions. The creature wasn't the only danger in this world. There was something deeper, something that might be the key to understanding the rift's true purpose. With a deep breath, Elara steadied her blaster and fired again, this time aiming for the creature's glowing eyes. The shot hit its mark, and the creature howled in agony, stumbling back. For a moment, Elara thought she might have won, but then the ground beneath her feet trembled. The creature didn't stop, it seemed to be calling something, and from the shifting shadows, more figures emerged. At least 5 more of the creatures, all as terrifying and fierce as the first. Elara's heart sank. She was surrounded. Her only choice was to fight her way out, and to learn what lay beyond the rift before these creatures claimed her as their prey. If the rift had brought her to this universe, it had done so for a reason. She had to survive long enough to uncover it. With determination burning in her chest, Elara backed toward the rift, her eyes scanning the approaching creatures. She would face them head-on if she had to, but the truth of the rift awaited, and she wouldn't leave this place without answers. Elara's pulse quickened as she backed toward the flickering rift, her eyes darting from one monstrous creature to another. The first one, with its glowing red eyes, still writhed in pain, but the others were closing in. Their movements were fluid, calculated. These weren't just wild beasts. They were predators driven by something more than hunger. A deep, instinctual force that seemed to bind them to this world. As the creatures encircled her, Elara's fingers tightened around her blaster. She was running out of time. Her mind raced, grasping for any solution, any advantage that could help her survive. The first creature lunged again, its claws slashing through the air. Elara dove to the side, her boots skimming across the dusty earth, and fired a shot that hit its shoulder. The creature let out a guttural scream, but it didn't stop. It pivoted on its feet and charged again, its sharp fangs bared. Another shot. Another miss. Elara gritted her teeth. She had to hit its eyes. She had learned from the previous encounter that was the only way to slow them down. But they were fast, and with every passing second, more of them were closing in. There was no time for hesitation. She fired again, her breath shallow as she tried to steady her aim, and this time, the blast struck true. The creature shrieked in agony as it staggered backward, its glowing red eyes flashing erratically before it crumpled to the ground. But there was no relief. The other creatures weren't fazed. They didn't care about the loss of one of their own. They only cared about the hunt. The ground trembled again, this time with greater force. The creatures halted, their heads jerking up in unison, as if sensing something neither Alara nor her mind could yet comprehend. Then the air around them began to vibrate. It was faint at first, like a low hum beneath the storm's howling winds, but soon it was undeniable. The rift. It was resonating. The strange, unnatural pulse that had initially lured Alara here seemed to grow in strength. But this time it was not just energy, it was something more. Something alive. Alara felt it, too, the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the pressure building as if the fabric of the world itself were warping. Something from the rift was making its presence known. She wasn't just a visitor in this universe anymore. She was being drawn deeper into its mysteries. Suddenly the creatures froze, their glowing eyes flickering. The previously predatory snarls faded, replaced by something almost reverent. Alara's heart hammered in her chest as she realized something crucial. These creatures weren't just attacking her because she was a threat. They were reacting to her presence. To the rift's energy. They were connected to the force she had unknowingly disturbed. Just then, the ground before her cracked open with a deafening noise. From the fissure, an ethereal figure emerged. It was humanoid but translucent, its form shimmering like an illusion. Its presence was overwhelming, unlike anything Alara had ever felt before. It stood before her, taller than any of the creatures, its eyes glowing with an ancient, unfathomable intelligence. The creatures, all of them, stepped back in unison, lowering their heads. They were no longer a threat. They were subdued. Alara's breath caught in her throat. Was this what had been pulling at the edges of her mind? Had she accidentally unleashed something far greater than she could ever have imagined? The being spoke without sound, its voice penetrating her very thoughts. "You are the one who disturbed the balance." Alara stood frozen, her hands trembling. She couldn't even bring herself to speak. She had no idea what it meant, but she understood its implication. She had triggered something ancient and powerful. The rift. It wasn't just a portal between universes. It was something far more complex. A force that bridged realities, yes, but also a force that guarded them. And she had broken through. The being stepped closer, its form rippling with strange energy. The worlds are not meant to intertwine. You, human, have awakened what was meant to sleep. Alara swallowed hard, her thoughts racing. She had thought she was alone in this universe, in this reality, but she was beginning to realize that nothing was as it seemed. The creatures, the rift, none of this was random. It was connected to something older than her understanding of time and space. She wasn't just an observer. She was a catalyst. Before she could respond, the figure raised a translucent hand, and the rift pulsed with a violent surge of energy. The ground beneath her feet buckled. The creatures snarled but remained still as if under a spell. She was being drawn closer to the rift. A voice echoed in her mind, clearer this time, "You must choose." Choose? Alara's thoughts whirled. She had no idea what this being wanted from her. What did she have to choose? But before she could ask, the rift opened wide, its vast energies pulling her forward. The very fabric of reality seemed to stretch and tear as she was pulled closer, her feet leaving the ground. The storm intensified, lightning flashing around her. The creatures watched silently, no longer the predators they had once been. Their gaze was now filled with something else, uncertainty, perhaps fear. The being's eyes bore into her. "You have one chance to right the wrongs. To heal what you have broken." Alara had no idea what that meant, but as she was pulled toward the rift's expanding core, one thing was clear. Her journey into the heart of the quantum rift had only just begun. And the stakes were higher than she could ever have imagined. Alara's world warped and twisted as she was pulled deeper into the rift. The storm above her cracked open, unleashing torrents of energy that danced around her like living lightning. The ground beneath her dissolved into shimmering, translucent patterns, leaving her floating within a vast expanse of darkness. Time seemed irrelevant here, as if the very concept had been stripped away. The figure, the being from the rift, was gone, but its voice still echoed in her mind. "You must choose." What choice? What did she have to do to right the wrongs? There were no answers, only the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Her body felt weightless, adrift in a space that defied reason. The rift wasn't simply a passage between worlds, it was a living entity, a bridge between realities. And Alara was its unintentional voyager. She closed her eyes, trying to focus, trying to reach for some kind of rationality amidst the chaos. What was the being warning her about? What had she disrupted? Suddenly the world around her began to shift. Colors that were beyond any she had ever seen filled her vision, and she felt herself moving, not in any direction she could perceive, but rather through it, like a pulse through the very fabric of space itself. Then, with a violent jolt, the sensation stopped. Elara was no longer floating in an endless abyss. She found herself standing on solid ground again, though the landscape was unlike anything she had seen before. The world before her seemed to be in a state of suspended decay. The sky was a swirling mixture of deep purples and greens, and the air felt thick with energy. Towering structures, alien, crystalline, and jagged, rose from the horizon like ancient monuments, their surfaces pulsing with a faint, otherworldly glow. It felt like a world that had once been vibrant, full of life, but now teetered on the edge of collapse. Elara stood in awe for a moment, absorbing the strange beauty of this place. Then a shift in the atmosphere caught her attention. From the edge of her vision she saw movement, dozens of figures, humanoid but distorted, marching toward her with purpose. Their eyes glowed with the same eerie red light she had seen in the creatures before. She stepped back instinctively, her hand going to her blaster, but she realized that these were not the same creatures she had encountered earlier. These beings were taller, more angular, with skeletal features and an air of intelligence that the others lacked. As they drew closer, Elara's heart skipped a beat. She could hear their voices now, though they were not spoken aloud. They whispered into her mind, their language foreign and strange, but the meaning was unmistakable. "You have come. The one who tears the fabric." Elara's breath caught in her throat. The one who tears the fabric, the words reverberated in her head, like a warning bell. She had thought the rift was a path to discovery, a scientific breakthrough, but it was so much more than that. She had inadvertently shattered something ancient and powerful. One of the beings, taller than the others, its form glowing faintly in the dark light, stepped forward. It raised a hand and the others halted. The air around Elara crackled with energy as if the very molecules were being manipulated. "You are not meant to be here," the figure spoke, its voice cold and disembodied, yet somehow resonant with authority. "This world is dying because of you?" Elara's mind reeled. "What do you mean? I didn't mean to disrupt anything. I was just trying to understand." Her voice trembled, but she refused to back down. She couldn't let fear control her, not now. The figure studied her for a moment, its glowing eyes piercing through her. Then it gestured to the surrounding world. "This is one of many realities that have begun to collapse. The balance has been disrupted. The rift, the crossing between worlds, it is not a passage. It is a fracture, a tear in the order of the universe. You have touched it, and in doing so, you have awakened the forces that once held these worlds apart." Elara felt her stomach twist. She had known there was something dangerous about the rift, but she hadn't understood the scale of what she was dealing with. It wasn't just a way to explore parallel universes, it was a force that kept the very fabric of reality from unraveling. "Can't we fix it? Can't we restore the balance?" Elara asked, her voice barely a whisper. The figure paused, considering her. Then it raised its arm again. "It is not that simple. There are forces beyond your understanding that govern these worlds. To heal the fracture you've caused, you must make a choice. A choice that will not only shape the fate of this world, but of all worlds that are bound by the rift." Elara's heart raced. This wasn't just about survival anymore. She had stepped into something far more complicated, a cosmic web of realities that she had no business tampering with. But the longer she stayed, the more she felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. She had to make the right choice, or risk bringing about the collapse of more worlds. The figure's voice broke through her thoughts once again. "You must decide, human. Will you sever the rift forever, destroying the link between the worlds? Or will you attempt to heal it, restoring the delicate balance but at great personal cost? The price for this choice is something you may not be ready to pay." Elara's mind spun as she stared at the fractured world around her. What did it mean to sever the rift? What would happen to the other worlds if she did? And if she chose to heal it, what would that truly cost her? The rift pulsed in the distance, calling to her, but now, Elara realized it wasn't just a doorway to other realities, it was the heart of a cosmic struggle. And whatever choice she made, the consequences would ripple through every universe connected to it. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on Elara as she stood before the crystalline beings, their eerie presence looming over her. Their glowing eyes flickered like distant stars, cold and unblinking, as they waited for her to decide the fate of not just this world, but all worlds connected by the rift. Sever it, or heal it? The choice had never been clearer, but the consequences were shrouded in uncertainty. The rift had been an unintended doorway for Elara, a portal to parallel universes, a scientific breakthrough that had spiraled into something far more dangerous. Now she was on the precipice of deciding whether to destroy everything she had discovered or to risk her very soul in an attempt to restore balance. "I don't know if I can," Elara said, her voice trembling. Her thoughts raced and she could feel the weight of the rift's pull, the draw toward understanding, toward exploration. But with it came the realization that by delving deeper, she might be setting in motion an irreversible chain of events. The tall figure in front of her studied her, its translucent skin flickering like a distorted image in a mirror. You do not have the luxury of time. Every moment you hesitate causes the rift to expand. The fabric of this universe and all others is being torn apart. The question is not whether you can. It is whether you are willing. Ilara's heart thundered in her chest. Willing to sacrifice everything for something she barely understood. The words of the figure echoed in her mind as the world around her seemed to warp and shift, unstable, like a reality on the brink of collapse. Cracks appeared in the very sky above her, fissures that seemed to bleed pure light. The world was crumbling, as if even the air itself was trying to tear free from the laws that governed it. "I'm willing," she whispered. "I'll do whatever it takes." The being nodded slowly, its eyes glowing with an ancient, unreadable expression. "Then prepare yourself, human. The path you walk will not be an easy one. The rift does not forgive, and neither do the forces that control it." Before Ilara could respond, the ground beneath her feet cracked open, a deep, resonant hum filling the air. The rift itself pulsed, a deep, rhythmic throb that seemed to vibrate through her very bones. The world around her began to distort violently, the fractured landscape collapsing and folding in on itself. Time itself felt like it was bending, sliding into infinite directions all at once. She was being pulled back toward the rift, her body weightless as the energy from the portal surrounded her. In the distance, she saw the forms of the otherworldly creatures again, all staring at her as she was drawn into the rift's expanding core. Their eyes were no longer filled with the mindless hunger they once carried. Now there was a sense of urgency, even fear. "Wait!" Ilara cried, but the words were lost in the overwhelming surge of energy around her. Her body tumbled through the rift's core, as if the very fabric of space was being ripped apart, and she found herself slipping between moments, between realities. Each world she passed seemed more fragile than the last, distant echoes of countless universes crumbling as she passed. The rift wasn't just a passage, it was the culmination of everything these parallel worlds had built. A wound in the cosmos itself. And she was at the center of it. As she was hurled through time and space, a strange voice whispered through her consciousness. It was neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel, it was something ancient, something far beyond her understanding. "You are the catalyst, the bridge, the one who will either unite or divide all worlds. But the cost, it is not yours alone to bear." The voice faded, leaving Ilara in a void where there was no time, no space, only the overwhelming presence of the rift. She could feel its power thrumming through her, binding her to the heart of this universe and every other universe it touched. And then it happened. A terrible, unbearable pressure surged from within her. She screamed, her voice lost in the infinite echo of the rift. The energy surged, and Ilara felt herself being torn apart. But just as the weight became unbearable, something shifted. A realization, no, a choice began to form in her mind. She wasn't alone in this. The rift was not simply a portal. It was a force that connected every world, every being, every thread of reality. It knew her intentions, her fears, and her strength. Ilara understood. This wasn't just about restoring balance, it was about sacrificing that balance for the greater good of all realities. The rift would not simply heal by her actions. It would transform, evolve, and become a living entity, a keeper of equilibrium. But to do so, it would require an equal exchange, an exchange of lives, of souls, of time. It was her humanity against the very fabric of existence. A blinding light enveloped her, and the world around her shattered into countless fragments. She felt herself slipping away from the physical realm, her consciousness dissolving into the cosmic web of the rift. And then, as the rift's power reached its zenith, she made her choice. Her soul surged forward, connecting with the countless other beings tied to the rift. Her essence merged with the vast energy, intertwining with the cosmic fabric, stabilizing it at the cost of her own physical existence. Ilara's consciousness drifted through the boundless expanse, her mind untethered, free from the constraints of time and space. Her physical form was gone, lost to the energies of the rift, but her essence lingered in the vast weave of realities, a quiet pulse in the cosmic flow. She could feel the worlds around her, the interconnected lives that depended on the rift's delicate balance, the forces of nature, time, and matter that were now at peace once again. For the first time since entering this strange, dangerous world, Ilara felt a sense of clarity, of purpose. She had chosen the rift over herself. She had chosen to merge with the very heart of the universe, to heal what had been fractured by her curiosity. And now, the ripple of her sacrifice spread outwards, touching every reality tied to the rift. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Her awareness, though no longer bound by the confines of her body, shifted toward the presence that had guided her, the ethereal being who had warned her of the consequences of her actions. It appeared before her once more, this time not as a being of translucent energy but as an intricate pattern of pure light, a sentient force woven into the very fabric of existence. You have done what no being before you has dared to do. The voice resonated in her mind, calm and reverberating with power. You have chosen to become one with the rift, to restore balance to all realities. The cost is immense, but your sacrifice will be remembered, woven into the history of the cosmos. Elara had no body to speak, but her thoughts were clear. Will it be enough? The being's light flickered gently, a response to her silent question. It will be. But the journey has only just begun. The rift has been healed, but the universes are not static. They will continue to evolve, and with that evolution comes new challenges. Elara's mind grasped the truth of the being's words. The rift had been stabilized, but in doing so, she had become part of something much larger than herself. Her existence, now an integral part of the rift's essence, would be woven into the changing tides of reality forever. She would guide the balance, ensuring that the fracture she had caused would never again destabilize the multiverse. As the light of the being faded into the eternal swirl of energies, Elara's consciousness began to feel a shift. She could sense new lives, new worlds forming, their fates still unwritten. The fabric of the universe pulsed gently in time with her own existence. The guardians of the rift will rise, the being's voice echoed one final time, but it is not their time yet. Your journey will live on in those who come after you. You will be their guide, their keeper, their memory. And just like that, the presence was gone. For a moment all was still. Elara felt herself, her essence, transcending time, unbound by the constraints of space. She was everywhere and nowhere, a silent observer in a universe she had helped to heal. The world she had once known, the creatures she had encountered, all now thrived in harmony. She had done what she could, and in the end it was enough. But even in this vast, timeless state, a part of her could not help but wonder, had her choice truly been selfless, or had it been a way to escape the unbearable weight of responsibility? Perhaps it didn't matter. She had made a choice, and in that choice she had reshaped the future of the multiverse. And yet, the echo of her humanity remained, a small spark of life in the vast expanse. She was not just a force. She was Elara, the human who had crossed into the unknown, who had stood at the edge of oblivion and chosen to save what could not be saved without sacrifice. The rift was no longer just a gateway between universes, it was a living, breathing entity that would continue to guide the fate of all worlds. And as Elara's consciousness settled into the eternal flow, she felt a quiet sense of peace. For even though she was no longer present in the physical world, her impact would live on. In the ripples of time, in the whispers of the universes, Elara's name would never fade. The last echoes of the rift's pulse resonated deep within her, the final remembrance of a journey that had changed everything. And then, in the stillness of the cosmos, she was at peace. The end.